The Congress of Vienna, Metternich's Concert of Europe, and Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck's alliance system kept a long peace from 1815 to 1914. From the period between 1815 to 1914, there were no conflicts on the scale of the Napoleonic Wars or World War I. However, this does not mean there were no wars during this period, just that the scale was smaller and the aims were more limited. From 1803 to 1815, the period of Napoleonic warfare, between 2.5 and 3.5 million military were dead or missing. This does not include civilian deaths, though high are harder to measure. From 1914 to 1918, the period of World War I, roughly 10 million military were dead or missing, from a world population that was roughly twice what it had been during the Napoleonic period. The only war that came close to being a European-wide war was the Crimean War. In July 1853, Russia occupied territories in the Crimea that had previously been controlled by Turkey. Britain and France were concerned about Russian expansion and attempted to achieve a negotiated withdrawal. Turkey was unwilling to grant concessions and declared war on Russia. Some historians suggest that Tsar Nicholas I was primarily interested in protecting the Orthodox Church and was willing to use force to do so. However, the closing of the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles to warships of all foreign countries, including Russia, which had followed the conclusion of the International Straits Commission in 1841, proved an intolerable limitation on the sovereignty of Russia and bottled up the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Tsar Nicholas I of Russia had expected the support of Austria, its ally, and the neutrality of Prussia when it intervened in the affairs of the Ottoman Empire. After the Russians destroyed the Turkish fleet at Sinope in the Black Sea in November 1853, Britain and France joined the war against Russia. This did not bring an immediate response from the Allies. Only Britain and French newspapers created a historical clamor over the massacre of Sinope. What really got the attention of the British, however, was the use for the first time of exploding shells. With this new weapon, the Russian fleet completely annihilated the Turks and got the attention of England. You must remember that at this time, England ruled the waves. With the use of exploding shells, Russia had challenged the British Navy. Even after almost 40 years, the Crimean War was still fought on the same manner and with almost the same equipment, uniforms, weapons, and thinking as at Waterloo. The war was the last of the old-fashioned wars, and it was the last with the exception of the French, where the majority of the artillery was smooth bore. This was the war that started the change in the British military, which ultimately saw the end of the system whereby a wealthy man could purchase a commission for himself or his son. The war bolstered the young Second Empire of Napoleon III. It helped indirectly in the unification of Italy and the creation of the German state, and it delayed for a while the slow decay of the Ottoman Empire. The French were the protectors of the Roman Catholic Church in the East. The Russians considered themselves the protector of the Orthodox Church, who, with the Roman Catholics, were the custodians of the holy places. Thus France and Russia were at odds in this area as well. Even after almost 40 years, the Crimean War was still fought on the same manner and with almost the same equipment, uniforms, weapons, and thinking as at Waterloo. The war was the last of the old-fashioned wars, and it was the last with the exception of the French, where the majority of the artillery was smooth bore. For the common soldier of both sides, the next 2 years were to produce harsh Russian winters, summers with searing heat, poor food, disease, terror, boredom, insufficient clothing and medical supplies, insufficient supplies and equipment and munitions, incompetent leadership, and even a hurricane in November of 1854. Interspersed with this sad state of affairs were the battles of the River Alma, Inkerman, Balaclava, and its infamous charge of the Light Brigade, and the long siege and eventual capture of Sevastopol. More than 450,000 Russians lost their lives during the conflict. The Turks lost 100,000, the French lost 95,000, and the English lost 22,000. The Crimea War postponed Russia's territorial advances until the beginning of the 1870s. It gave birth to the acceptance of female nurses, as witnessed by the work of the Lady with the Lamp, Florence Nightingale, and her pioneers in battlefield medicine. It utilized photography for the first time on the battlefield. It was the first war fought with rifled muskets, and the first to use railways, ironclad ships, electrically exploding mines, and the telegraph.